All right, welcome to Mind Scope Philosophy. Today, we're going to dive into a really provocative and, let's be honest, challenging idea from our source material. What if the whole modern idea of sexual liberation isn't actually freedom? What if, as this particular philosophy argues, it's a kind of hidden slavery? So this is the core claim, the big, bold statement at the heart of what we're exploring. The viewpoint here is that under the surface of pop culture, there's a much darker truth about the real cost of casual sex. So let's see how this argument actually gets built. So where does an argument like this even begin? Well, interestingly, it's not with morality or ethics. The first major point is that this whole process starts by fundamentally rewiring our own brain chemistry. And right off the bat, the text draws this very direct and, highly controversial parallel. The argument it's making is that casual sex can actually hijack the brain's reward system, kind of creating a cycle where the hunt for new partners starts to look a lot like an addict's endless chase for that first, powerful high.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. The source frames these neurochemicals, oxytocin, dopamine, not as just recreational. No, it calls them evolutionary superglue. The idea is that these are biological tools designed for permanent, lifelong bonding, which it claims get used in a way that actually works against our own long-term happiness.
So to kind of sum up what happens after this so-called brain rewiring, the text borrows an idea from the philosopher Nietzsche. The claim is that this chemical roller coaster blurs our judgment, It makes us mistake the fleeting buzz of a new encounter for the deep, real satisfaction of a genuine connection. Okay, so if the first part of this is all about brain chemistry, where does the argument go from there? Well, it moves from the biological to the psychological, right into our very sense of who we are. How do these experiences, from this viewpoint, actually shape our identity?
And this quote, wow, it's such a powerful metaphor for this whole section. The argument is that instead of having one clear reflection of who you are, you're left with all these broken shards, each one reflecting a different, kind of distorted version of yourself back at you.
So in this museum of broken mirrors, your identity, the source suggests, stops being one whole thing. It becomes more like a collection of performances. You might be the bad boy one night, the sensitive lover the next. The idea is you're not really one person anymore. You're just cycling through different roles for different people, and your core identity gets a little more fragmented each time. This is a really personal and pretty complex idea, this notion that our identity can become a series of performances. We're genuinely curious to hear what you think about this. Does this resonate at all with modern experiences? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.
Okay, so we've looked at the brain and we've looked at the self. The next theme connects these internal changes to the outside world of relationships. It basically says that all this rewiring and fragmenting inevitably changes how we value intimacy itself.
And here, the source uses this analogy of an emotional economy. It compares intimacy that's backed by commitment and trust to a gold standard. It's rare, it's earned, it holds its value. But casual intimacy, it calls that fiat intimacy. Just like money that isn't backed by gold, this kind of intimacy is backed by nothing more than temporary hormones. It's common, and because of that, the argument goes, it's just less valuable.
And that economic analogy just keeps going. The viewpoint here is that by making these intense experiences so common, we're basically flooding our personal market with a kind of counterfeit intimacy. And the big consequence? Over time, it supposedly destroys our ability to even recognize what the real thing, that gold standard, even looks like.
To really drive this point home, the text gives this example. Imagine a person who's had 20 of these intense, this is it, I found my soulmate kind of experiences. But after the 20th time, the source claims, their emotional judgment is just shot. They can't even trust their own feelings anymore. And this brings us to the final, and I'd say most severe, warning in this whole argument. It's the idea that this isn't just about some temporary confusion or loss of value. The source argues that these changes can become permanent, leading to an emotional point of no return. The text actually borrows a concept from astrophysics to make its most dramatic claim. It talks about a psychological event horizon, like a boundary in our ability to bond with others. The idea is, once you cross it, the emotional gravity of habit is so strong that the ability to form a real, lasting attachment is lost, forever. Now, according to this viewpoint, this isn't something that happens all at once. It's a gradual process. First, your brain learns that intense bonding is always temporary. Then, attachment itself gets recoded in your mind as something disposable. And eventually, the whole capacity for a permanent partnership just collapses, leaving nothing but that initial spark of attraction.
So what's the devastating outcome after crossing this so-called event horizon? Well, according to this viewpoint, you're basically left with the ghost of a connection. You can still feel attraction, you can go through the motions and perform intimacy, but that underlying neurochemical ability to actually feel genuine lasting attachment is gone. And this chart just visualizes how stark and absolute that proposed outcome really is. We're not talking about a minor dip in your ability to bond. It's presented as a catastrophic failure of our evolved systems, a fundamental and, in this view, permanent loss of the ability to form lasting love. Ultimately, the source frames this whole discussion in really big existential terms. It concludes that these aren't just lifestyle choices about what you do with your body. They're fundamental choices about the kind of person you are capable of becoming, a choice about your very soul's capacity to love and connect. We've journeyed through a very challenging and definitely countercultural argument today. Whether you agree with it or not, it for sure makes you think. If you value these kinds of deep dives that question the narratives shaping our lives, be sure to subscribe to Mindscope Philosophy. Thanks for joining us.